This is a dramatic reading of Gravity is a Mystery, a blog by the Stand-Up Physicist, available at science20.com. Gravity continues to work even though we don't know why. Newton wrote down the first calculus-based description. Gravity worked at a distance for reasons that are beyond our reach. Einstein developed a more accurate description with a little help from his friends, including Grossman, Hilbert, and Schwarzschild. Here's a quote: "Matter tells space how to warp, and warped space tells matter how to move," is John Wheeler's circular logic jerk. My own work suggests that gravity is all about doing close to absolutely nothing. Push to do, trivial, simple harmonic motions because there is actually other stuff in the universe. In this blog, I will focus on what it means to be alone. And then what happens when someone else crashes into this solitary confinement. So the title, Gravity is a Mystery, comes from this Let's Read and Find Out Science Stage 2 series that I bought about 30 of these books for my soon-to-be 3-year-old daughter because she loves all the vocabulary and strange photographs. So let's get a quote from this book that I think is very relevant here. Okay. Ooh, look at all those equations there. So, I can't even see what's on. All right, great. We know gravity is everywhere, even though we can't see it. And we know it pulls on every rock, every grain of sand. It pulls on everything. But no one knows exactly what gravity is. That is why gravity is a mystery. Now, as a Stage 2 book, this is aimed at the primary grades. I'm talking like 1, 2, 3, that sort of thing. The lesson still applies to grad students working on strings or loop quantum gravity, who will be stuck with Wheeler's Wheelerism. Readers of this blog can break out of that trap and think on our own. Imagine a brain isolation experiment. No information from the outside world goes in. The optic nerve is blocked. Auditory sounds are silenced. No physical feedback of any sort is allowed to occur. So, if you were to do so, you can let information out. I mean, you can do things like scream, but without the information coming in, you would not be able to tell that you were screaming. Now, this sounds like it could be a lost story of Poe or some kind of Tibetan monkic practice. So spend a few cycles, breathing and trying to connect to that nothingness. What math would you use to directly describe that experience? Well, there's nothing to look at or to count. The geometry of the ancient Greeks could not be drawn. You could do math with time. The most basic operation is addition. Getting older is unavoidable. Getting older adds more time to one's history, over and over again. Subtraction, on the other hand, is the door into the moments before. Now, this is not time travel. Instead, subtraction is a method to reference one's own history, a history that does require memory. How far back could you go? Well, personal limit is conception. Not that anybody has a working memory at that time. The DNA in our germ cells, otherwise known as testicles or eggs, that actually goes back to your mom and dad, and which in turn goes back to their mom and dad, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that tenuous DNA link actually stretches all the way back to when DNA overthrew the RNA world. Date biologists are never really going to be able to pin down, since the victor eats the loser. However, life pinballed out of that organic primordial soup. It definitely came out of the Earth that, kind of coalesced 4 billion years ago. And the atoms, that make me up now, certainly were there, and they actually went through a supernova, or possibly two, together. And those things are somehow linked all the way back to the Big Bang, which is 13.6 billion years ago. And science at this time is clueless about what happened with space-time before the Big Bang. The future has a similar kind of feel. The personal story for all reading this is going to end in 120 years, and actually probably a lot less than that. And now, as long as a person is active participant in creating a progeny, their germline will march on, like mine, at least for a while. I've actually have a vague memory of someone calculating the average time for anyone's children surviving throughout the ages. And given enough time, most family lines lose. The atoms are going to survive that make me up now. Even after the sun goes like red giant phase and swallows up the Earth. I'm not sure if it's going to blow up too. Maybe we don't know. We certainly have a guess about that state. But and then after that, not sure. Science is not sure either. So stuff from me is going to go on for an absurdly long time, but my connection is really, really tenuous. Where there is addition, there is multiplication. Multiplication is a faster way to count time. There are different rates to count time, from picoseconds to centuries to millennium. Multiply mini numbers or huge numbers, or do both. You're free to do that. Imagine do a 12-part beat and a 13-part beat, and matching that every, say, 156 beats, as Feynman actually could do playing the bongos. Oops, there are no no bongos in this brain isolation experiment, so you'll just have to do the beat itself without the bongo. Where there is addition and multiplication, there are polynomials. Give a mathematician a polynomial and he can build any function. The world of polynomials becomes a world of rhythms in this isolated world. The entire tradition of real numbers can be rebuilt alone with just time. Time is a totally ordered set. Each moment either is before, after, or at exactly the same moment in time. A life in brain isolation could actually be full, with far too much to do if you were into the math. Now, into this thought trip, the brain isolation is spontaneously broken by a glowing blob. How far away is that blob? Well, it's not clear, since there are no other references to use to gauge the distance. Now, what math could be used to describe this glowy thing? Well, all the real number stuff works, so that's good. But new operations are possible, like counting discrete blobs. We get counting back, so good. And now, using mirrors, there's a new kind of negative. A negative location in space. The negative actually depends on the location and shape of those mirrors. Now, math wonks are going to talk about the choice of basis vectors and the origin, but it's really the same thing as where are you going to put your mirrors. Space does not become a totally ordered set until those arbitrary choices for the basis vectors and the origins are made. Now, where there is addition, there is multiplication. I think I said that. Oh, I'm saying it again. I love consistency. And there are multiple ways to multiply. One type of multiplication takes into account the handedness of things in space-time. This sort of multiplication is not taught often. I mean, sometimes, but it's pretty rare. And it goes under the name of a quaternion product. Real and complex numbers are the popular girls, you know. Everyone is used to them. They want to use them in all their calculations. Mentioning a quaternion product has been known to piss people off, going all the way back actually to Lord Kelvin. And the spirit of spitting on quaternions is alive today. I get it from time to time, and I was like, well, whatever. Old school. The man who repurposed the word for 4 Roman soldiers, that's what a quaternion is, in the King James Bible, of course, oversold their importance and underdelivered their utility. And he died of alcoholism. Critics have buried the quaternion work and instead have used Gibbs' fractured rehash known as vector calculus, which dominates math so much so today. I'm retro, really. And I should say maybe that it really is fractured because the quaternions say there's a particular relationship between, say, the cross product and the dot product. There's actually a minus sign in there. And people are like, I don't like minus signs. So, we'll just ignore it and give you this this Gibbs vector calculus instead. Isn't it great? And I won't tell you that this is probably a source of very deep accounting problems in physics. No, we won't mention that. We won't mention that at all. Okay, so, I mean, I really am retro. So I prefer multiplication that has multiple parts to it. Some are about, you know, the handedness of things. It's called the cross product, to curl. Some are about stretching pointy things. Oh, it's getting bigger, it's getting smaller. That's multiplying a scalar times a vector. And some parts are about how old something is. Now, bringing time clearly and consistently into the tools of geometry may be my most simple and radical idea. The idea, of course, is not novel. Minkowski was certainly a fan of that concept, but Minkowski really hasn't caught on. My sense is that people don't embrace the math of the transitory. Like the Romans, researchers want permanent truth that they can point to. Over there. Well, my life is fleeting, like the math I use. There always needs to be a place at the table for time in my worldview. Truth is temporary. Using the quaternion product, I've shown that in a math really heavy series of blogs that how to get to an utterly standard space-time wave equation for light. I mean, there's just no difference. Light permits communication by having second-order changes in space equaling second-order changes in time. Light is only about equal changes in space to equal changes in time. Light can be used to push electric charges around or to pull charges, like different charges, together. Gravity pulls everything together without pushing, which is actually a vital clue to why gravity is a mystery. What I have studied is a product of space-time far more obscure than the really unpopular quaternions. The product has no minus sign. The math tool needed, actually, to get things to fly away from each other. Time only knows how to step forward. I mean, that's my experience and everything around me. Creating sum after sum so that we all age together wherever we are, whatever we're doing. Now, what I call this California product is time addition's multiplicative cousin, a product that is all sums. There is no sense of handedness. When the California product is used in the same machinery as was done to generate the Maxwell equations, well, out pops something similar, but different. The space-time wave equation is just gone. And where, you know, that's where the space-time changes, the changes in time exactly equal and opposite to those in changes in space. The replacement in the static case is Newton's law of gravity. Exactly. No gauge games needed. Now, instead of a wave equation in static, nearly flat spacetime, one can choose to write a solution that was known to Newton. Except that it's actually a 4-vector, an important difference. Or you can actually decide to write it as an exponential metric in what I call the potential metric duality. Now, in other areas of physics, duality is big. Like when two seemingly different approaches end up with exactly the same math. To quote Sasha Vogler's, I'm not pronouncing that name right, Vongehr's description of duality. What does duality mean? It means that there are dual descriptions of one and the same observed physics. Duality implies that you cannot possibly decide whether the one description T or the other, the T dual description T prime, is right or wrong. Because both descriptions lead to exactly the same observations for an observer who lives in the universe, who can be described by either theories T or T prime. Both are equally right or wrong, as they are dual descriptions. It is not about interpretation or the often used and abused Occam's razor, the favorite of wannabe philosophers, since dual descriptions are transformable into each other. They are the same, although they look incompatible. End quote. Thank you, Sasha. And no one other than my grad student buddy, who has written to say they see this potential metric duality. Sasha included, by the way. So his quote is in no endorsement of my work on gravity. I cannot force anyone, to take the divergence of the Christoffel symbol of the second kind of the exponential metric, except my friend in England who actually confirmed the calculation independently. Until people do the calculation, no one is going to be boarding my train, this train of theory work. So I ride along, getting older with all the stuff around me in this basement. The earth below me here, it's got a lot more stuff. More aging and more pull. All players have their own history and are required to account for all others. And the result is a few exponential functions which are really very, very small, meaning basically the math returns a 1. Oh, sorry, an almost 1. And that it's that almost that drives Adam's desire to say oscillate around the Earth, which they feature in this book here. Let's see. Oh, that's I think it's on page 6 and 7. There's the guy jumping in the hole, and now he's going to oscillate around the center of the Earth. It's going to take an hour and a half, and he's just going to keep on doing that until friction slows him down. But that's the kind of oscillation that I'm trying to do right now. I'm just not succeeding because there's all this huge traffic jam. It's you know, like 6,400 kilometer traffic jam to the center of the Earth, and we all want to do the same thing, and so we all end up doing nothing. The Earth itself, this whole big thing that we're trying to oscillate around, has been oscillating around the sun. Oh, what? You know, takes a year for it to do that. It's done that 4 billion times. Aren't you bored by now? Well, whatever. And honest, that's like hardly anything done for a really long time. So gravity will just keep on working regardless of the values of my efforts or anybody else's for that matter. All right, so here's the snarky puzzle. Is there a handedness to getting older? Is there a handedness to communication? If there is a handedness to either, how would that affect the arrow of space-time? All right, thank you very much.